Have you ever had that strange feeling that your mind is somehow playing tricks on your body? Well, today, we are diving deep into that fascinating and sometimes, let's be honest, kinda scary connection between our psychological state and our actual physical health. So let's start with a scenario that I'm willing to bet is pretty familiar to a lot of you. You've got a minor headache, nothing major. You do a quick search online, and suddenly 5 minutes down the rabbit hole, you are absolutely convinced you have a brain tumor. Sound familiar?
Yeah, if you're nodding along, there's actually a name for that. It's called Cyberchondria. It's that unique brand of health anxiety that gets supercharged by our late-night symptom searching online. But believe me, this is just one tiny piece of a much bigger, much more complicated puzzle.
The classic term for this, the one you've probably heard of, is hypochondriasis. These days, it's more formally called illness anxiety disorder. And it's not just regular worrying. We're talking about an intense, persistent, and really irrational fear that you're seriously ill even when all the medical tests and doctors tell you you're perfectly fine.
And the behaviors that come along with it are, well, they're pretty distinct. This can become like a full-time job. You're constantly checking your body for signs, making endless doctor's appointments. And here's the key part: never actually believing them when they say you're okay. It's a cycle of seeking reassurance but being unable to accept it, and it can totally take over your life.
But here's the thing. Just slapping the label health anxiety on all of this can actually be a bit misleading. It turns out there's a much more detailed map for understanding how our minds respond to illness. And when you look at it, you see this incredible variety of behaviors.
So what if it's not all just one thing? What if the ways we react to the idea of being sick are way more diverse and nuanced than we thought? What if there's a better framework, a better map, to help us navigate these really complex psychological reactions?
And that's exactly where this comes in. It's called the Diagnostic Criteria for Psychosomatic Research, or DCPR for short. The best way to think about it is like a super high-resolution satellite map of the mind-body connection. It goes way beyond the old-school labels to chart out all the subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, ways our minds react when we think we're sick.
Now, this map organizes our reactions into different clusters. We're going to start with the first one, which is called abnormal illness behavior. This is all about how we act and react to the very idea of being sick.
Okay, this is where that high-resolution map really comes in handy, because it helps us see a crucial difference. On one side, you have health anxiety. This is usually shorter term, maybe less than 6 months. You might worry, but when a doctor gives you the all-clear, you feel better. But hypochondriasis? That's a chronic, long-term state where that reassurance just doesn't stick. The belief that you're sick persists no matter what anyone says.
Now, let's swing to the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Forget constant worry. What about no worry at all? We're talking about illness denial. And this isn't just being positive or optimistic. It's an active, persistent refusal to accept the reality of a medical condition. And as you can imagine, that can be incredibly dangerous.
And here is a perfect and honestly pretty scary example. Imagine someone who's just been diagnosed with diabetes. In this case, denial isn't just a thought, it's an action. They keep eating high-sugar foods because they insist they feel fine. That's a direct rejection of their diagnosis, and it can lead to absolutely devastating health outcomes.
And then there's this. This is a very specific and frankly terrifying experience. Thanastrophobia isn't your general philosophical anxiety about mortality. No, this is an acute, all-consuming conviction that you are dying right now, in this very moment, even when there is zero medical reason for it. It's a sudden, overwhelming attack of mortal terror. So what happens when the problem isn't too much worry or even denial, but something else entirely? What happens when our emotions are there, but they just have nowhere to go? In this next section, we're going to explore how that unspoken emotional distress can actually show up in purely physical ways.
This whole phenomenon is called somatization. It's basically the conversion of emotional distress into real physical symptoms. That headache, that stomach pain, that crushing fatigue, the feelings in your body are 100% real, but their root cause isn't physical. It's psychological.
It's a really good question, right? I mean, if you're feeling stressed or anxious or sad, why wouldn't your brain just say that? Why does the body have to get involved and start creating these physical symptoms instead?
Well, a huge part of the answer often lies in this concept right here, alexithymia. It comes from Greek, and it literally means no words for emotions. It's a condition where a person genuinely struggles to identify, describe, or even recognize what they're feeling. It's almost like their brain reroutes all those intense emotional signals directly into the body. And this is a perfect way to picture it. If you don't really have the vocabulary for your own inner world, your body can take over as the messenger. So that feeling of anxiety becomes a tight knot in your stomach. Deep sadness might become a persistent dull headache. Your body is basically speaking the language that your mind can't.
Okay, so we've seen how our minds can invent illnesses, or how our bodies can express emotions for us. This final section looks at something even more direct, how specific psychological states and behavioral patterns can actually truly contribute to developing real, diagnosable physical diseases.
First up, there's demoralization. And it's so important to know that this is way more than just feeling sad or down. It's a profound sense of incompetence, a feeling completely overwhelmed and unable to face a challenge. You often see it in patients who are dealing with a really serious or chronic illness. It's the feeling of just giving up. And what is absolutely critical to understand here is that demoralization is not just depression by another name. It carries its own unique and serious risks. In fact, research shows that this specific feeling of hopelessness is an independent predictor of suicidal thoughts. That's why being able to recognize it is so vital. And then we get to a behavioral pattern that I think a lot of us have heard of. Type A. You know the classic traits: always in a hurry, feeling like you're in a constant race against the clock, intensely competitive, and maybe a little easily angered or hostile. It's a whole way of being in the world that's just defined by pressure and urgency.
And here's the kicker. The physical consequence of this mental state is profound. Decades of research have confirmed that this psychological profile isn't just a quirky personality type. It is a direct, independent risk factor for heart disease. That constant stress, that hostility, it literally, physically wears down your cardiovascular system over time.
So we've explored all these different psychological responses, from the extremes of anxiety and denial to emotions becoming physical symptoms to behaviors that actively harm our health. So we have to ask the big question: why does having this detailed map even matter?
Well, it matters because it shows us crystal clear that our health is never just a physical state. It's a story, one that we tell ourselves. It's an experience that is constantly being shaped by our fears, our beliefs, and our emotions. Understanding this map doesn't just lead to better medical care. It gives us a language to better understand ourselves. So the question I want to leave you with is this: how well do you really know your own personal health story?